You know what's fascinating about narcissists? They really believe they're the smartest person in the room. They walk around convinced that their games are undetectable, that their manipulations are flawless, and that you somehow are always one step behind them. They thrive on control, on pushing buttons, on creating confusion, because confusion is their weapon. When you're confused, when you're questioning yourself, when you're spinning in circles trying to make sense of their behavior, they feel powerful. That's their game. They lie, they gaslight, they withhold affection. They use silence as punishment. They pit people against each other. All of it is designed to make them feel like they're winning. But here's the truth they never want to admit. Every single one of those games plants the seed of their downfall. Every manipulation creates cracks in the foundation of their relationships. Every lie demands another lie to cover it. Every little stunt they pull leaves behind evidence, a trail, a residue that eventually exposes them. They think they're playing chess with you, but really, they're playing checkers with their own future. And what's worse is that they believe the temporary feeling of power they get from tricking you or controlling you is sustainable. They actually believe they can keep it up forever. But human psychology doesn't work like that. See, we are wired for truth, for consistency, for authenticity. Our nervous systems crave safety and stability. And when someone consistently destabilizes you, undermines you, and disrespects you, there comes a point where your survival instinct kicks in. You may tolerate the game for a while, you may rationalize it, you may even blame yourself, but eventually, the human spirit rebels. You wake up, you see through the illusion, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. That's why the games always backfire. Because what narcissists don't understand is that people don't stay confused forever. People learn. People grow. And people, once they've reached their breaking point, make decisions that cannot be reversed. Think about it. When someone lies to you once, you might let it go. When they manipulate you, you might make excuses for them. But when that becomes a pattern, when the confusion becomes constant, when the harm becomes undeniable, something inside you shifts. That's when the game stops being entertainment for them and becomes exposure for them. Their mask starts to slip, their reputation starts to suffer. And the very control they're so desperate to maintain slips right through their fingers. Here's the irony. Narcissists believe their manipulations make them powerful. In reality, those manipulations make them fragile. They become dependent on the game itself. Without the lies, without the drama, without the constant attempts to control, they have nothing. They are empty. And so they keep playing the same tricks over and over, never realizing that their predictability is the very thing that reveals them. You can't keep people fooled forever. You can't gaslight forever. You can't create chaos forever. Sooner or later, people connect the dots. And when they do, the narcissist's entire strategy collapses. Now, here's the deeper psychological truth. The narcissist's game is rooted in insecurity. They manipulate because they're terrified of being ordinary. They gaslight because they're terrified of being wrong. They control because they're terrified of being powerless. Their entire life is built around covering up that fear. But when you play life as a game of cover-ups, of hiding, of deception, you eventually suffocate yourself. You can't breathe in a life that isn't real. And whether they admit it or not, they feel that. They know deep down that their games are costing them more than they gain. Philosophically, it's like this: you cannot build a meaningful life on lies. Lies are weak foundations. They collapse. And when you build a relationship, a career, or even just your self-image on those weak foundations, collapse is inevitable. That's why narcissists often end up repeating the same cycles, losing people, losing opportunities, losing trust, and they never connect the dots. They blame everyone else, never realizing that the common denominator in all their failures is the games they chose to play. And this is where the backfire becomes devastating. The people they think they're controlling, the ones they underestimate, the ones they manipulate, eventually become the very people who walk away, the very people who refuse to engage, the very people who see them for what they are. And once that happens, the narcissist loses their favorite weapon, the illusion of superiority. Because when people stop believing in their game, the game is worthless. Here's the part I want you to really sit with every single time a narcissist plays one of their little tricks. They're digging their own hole. It may look like a win in the moment. They got away with a lie. They got you to doubt yourself. They got someone else to turn against you. But those moments add up. And over time, those same moments become the evidence that exposes them. What they thought was cleverness was actually self-destruction. What they thought was control was actually a loss of respect. What they thought was power was actually weakness. You don't even have to do anything to punish a narcissist. Their own behavior is the punishment. Their own games will undo them. You just have to step back, refuse to play, and let the truth do what truth always does. It rises. It reveals. It restores. And that's the beauty of it. You don't have to fight them on their level. You don't have to match their chaos with chaos. All you have to do is stay rooted in reality, stay grounded in yourself, and let their games collapse under their own weight. Because they always do. They always backfire. So the next time you look back and think about all the manipulations, all the lies, all the little games they played, don't see it as a loss for you. See it as the beginning of their loss. See it as the unraveling of a pattern that will eventually cost them everything. Because the truth is simple, and it's unavoidable. You can't win at life by playing games with people's hearts, minds, and trust. You may get away with it for a season, but sooner or later, the game catches up with you. And when it does, it doesn't just cost you a relationship. It costs you credibility. It costs you respect. It costs you peace. In the end, the narcissist's games never crown them the winner. They crown them the fool who bet their entire life on deception. And that's a game no one ever wins. There's something a narcissist never really understands until it's far too late. They think everyone in their life is interchangeable. They think people are replaceable, disposable, that they can just discard someone the moment that person stops playing along with their games. They genuinely believe that losing you is no loss at all because, in their mind, there's always someone else they can manipulate, someone else they can charm, someone else they can drain. But here's where reality smacks them hard. You weren't just another player in their little game. You were the source. You were the one feeding them the admiration, the attention, the energy they needed to feel alive. And when you walk away, when you refuse to play anymore, that loss is something they can never recover from. Think about this for a moment. Narcissists don't create, they don't sustain, they consume. They consume your attention, your validation, your love, your empathy. They consume your time, your energy, your spirit. And they do it in such a way that you often don't even realize how much they've been taking until you're completely drained. You were the fuel for their entire identity. You were the mirror that reflected back to them the version of themselves they wanted to believe in. You were the anchor that kept their chaos somewhat grounded. And yet, because of their arrogance, because of their blindness, they treated you as if you were disposable, That's the fatal miscalculation. Because when you finally wake up to the truth, when you stop giving them the supply they've been feeding on, they lose far more than they thought possible. And here's the paradox: they will never admit it. They will never look you in the eye and say, "You mattered. You were irreplaceable." They'll tell themselves a story about how they moved on, how they found someone better, how they don't care. But deep down, they know. They know they lost the one person who saw them, who gave to them, who carried them, who believed in them when nobody else did. And no matter who they try to pull into their orbit next, it's never the same. Why? Because people like you don't come along every day. People who love deeply, who empathize, who forgive, who fight for the relationship, who try to understand, that's rare. And the narcissist knows it, even if they'll never say it out loud. They can collect new people, but those people will always be superficial replacements, temporary distractions, never the real thing. They'll never find another you. And let's look at this from a psychological perspective. Narcissists need supply, constant attention, validation, and admiration. But when they lose someone who is a consistent, high-quality source of that supply, their system destabilizes. They become restless, irritable, desperate. They jump from one new person to the next, always trying to recreate what they had, but never quite succeeding. It's like chasing a high that no longer exists. And with every failed attempt to replace you, the awareness grows. Even if they bury it, they lost something they can't get back. Philosophically, this is the tragedy of the narcissist's life. They confuse possession with value. They think that because they had you, they owned you. And because they owned you, they could treat you however they wanted. But value doesn't work like that. You can't mistreat something valuable and expect it to last. You can't take someone's love for granted and expect it to never run out. The narcissist learns this the hard way. By the time they realize your value, you're gone. And that's the one reality they can't undo. What makes this even more devastating for them is the silence that follows your departure. They're so used to you explaining yourself, defending yourself, giving them closure, reacting to their provocations. When you stop doing all of that, when you go quiet, when you stop responding, that's when the loss becomes real. They don't just lose your presence. They lose the sound of their own power bouncing back to them through you. And that silence is deafening. Now, let's be honest. When you first walk away, it might not feel like you hold the power. You might feel broken, exhausted, even unsure if leaving was the right decision. But over time, you begin to heal. You rebuild your sense of self. You reclaim your energy. You start to see how strong you are without them. And that's when the tables turn. Because while you're growing, while you're becoming stronger and freer, they're stuck. They're still playing the same games, still chasing validation, still trying to fill the void you left behind. And this is the part they'll never admit: the void never closes. They can mask it, they can deny it, they can project it onto others, but it never really goes away. They lost the one person they couldn't manipulate into staying forever. They lost the one person who knew their games and chose to walk anyway. And that's the loss they'll carry with them long after you've moved on. I want you to understand this, really understand it, because it changes how you see the entire story. You didn't lose. They did. You didn't get discarded. You reclaimed yourself. You didn't get replaced. You became irreplaceable. And the beauty of that truth is that it frees you. It frees you from the illusion that you weren't enough, that you were somehow at fault. Because the reality is simply you were more than enough. And that's why the loss of you will always haunt them. So if you ever find yourself wondering whether they've moved on, whether they even think about you, whether losing you mattered, the answer is yes. It mattered more than they'll ever admit. It mattered in ways they'll spend the rest of their life trying to cover up. Because you weren't just a part of their game. You were the prize they'll never win again. And that is the ultimate cost of their arrogance, their blindness, their manipulation. They lost you. And losing you isn't just about losing a person. It's about losing the one thing they could never create for themselves: real love, real loyalty, real connection. So the next time doubt creeps in, remind yourself of this truth. You were never replaceable. You were never disposable. You were the one they couldn't afford to lose. And they did. When a narcissist loses the irreplaceable, they lose the very thing their games were built to protect. And that is a loss they'll never recover from. Narcissists love to think they're winning. They walk around with this inflated sense of confidence, convinced that their games give them the upper hand. In the moment, they might even appear to be winning. They get the reaction they wanted. They pull the strings. They manipulate someone into doing exactly what they planned. But here's the deeper reality: every short-term win is really a long-term loss, because the very behaviors they think make them powerful are the exact same behaviors that destroy their future. Let's be clear about something. Trust is the currency of human connection. Without trust, relationships collapse, teams fall apart, and reputations shatter. And what do narcissists spend all their time doing? Breaking trust. They lie, they betray, they manipulate, they withhold. And every time they do, they think they've gotten away with something. But the truth is, trust doesn't recover so easily. You might forgive once, you might give another chance, you might try to move on, but those cracks remain. And over time, those cracks widen until there's no foundation left at all. That's not just about losing a partner or a friend. That's about sabotaging their entire future. Think about it like this. Life is built on compounding effects. The choices you make today ripple out into your tomorrow. Integrity compounds. Consistency compounds. Love compounds. But so does betrayal. So does dishonesty. So does manipulation. Narcissists keep making withdrawals from a bank account they never deposit into. And one day, they wake up bankrupt. Bankrupt of trust, bankrupt of opportunity, bankrupt of meaningful connection. And when they finally look around, but they realize that the very games they thought were clever are the reason they've got nothing left. And here's the irony. The narcissist spends their entire life trying to avoid vulnerability, trying to avoid being powerless. That's why they play these games. Because in their mind, control equals safety. But what they don't see is that their obsession with control destroys the very safety they crave. They end up isolated, mistrusted, and alone. They can't hold on to good people. They can't sustain healthy relationships. And they can't build a future that lasts. From a psychological standpoint, this is predictable. When someone refuses to grow, refuses to take accountability, refuses to self-reflect, they trap themselves in cycles. They repeat the same behaviors, the same manipulations, the same toxic patterns, expecting a different outcome. That's the definition of self-sabotage. They think they're moving forward, but they're really just running in circles. And every circle costs them something they can't get back. And here's where the cost becomes brutal. A narcissist doesn't just lose relationships. They lose their reputation. And reputation, whether we like it or not, shapes opportunity. When people start to see you as unreliable, untrustworthy, manipulative, doors close. People stop inviting you in. They stop recommending you. They stop rooting for you. And eventually, The narcissist realizes they've burned bridges they can never rebuild. That's the ultimate cost. It's not just about losing you. It's about losing the possibility of a different life altogether. Philosophically, it comes down to this: you can't cheat reality. You can't trick life into giving you meaningful results while you're busy cutting corners, deceiving people, and avoiding accountability. Life has a way of balancing the scales. And the narcissist, no matter how hard they fight it, ends up paying the price for their own choices. It might take years. It might happen slowly. But the end result is always the same. The games they play with others cost them everything of value. And here's something important. They don't even realize it until it's too late. In their mind, they're still winning, still in control, still untouchable. They don't see the pattern because they can't look in the mirror. They can't admit the common denominator in all their failures is themselves. And so, they keep playing the game, thinking it's working, even as their future collapses piece by piece. This is why, when you step out of their life, you don't have to worry about revenge. You don't have to worry about getting even. You don't have to worry about proving your worth. Time does it for you. Their future reveals the cost. And your future, if you stay focused on healing, growth, and truth, becomes the very proof that their games were never worth it. I want you to really think about this, because it's liberating. The narcissist doesn't get away with it. Not in the long run. They may fool people for a season. They may look like they're thriving on the surface, but underneath, their foundation is crumbling. Because you cannot build a sustainable life on lies. You cannot create lasting success on manipulation. And you cannot secure your future by destroying others. That's not power. That's fragility masquerading as strength. And you're free from that. You don't have to carry their burden. You don't have to fix their future. You don't have to play their game. You get to step forward into something real, something grounded, something authentic. That's the choice you have, and it's the one they'll never make. So let them think they're winning. Let them think they replaced you. Let them tell themselves whatever story they need to tell. Because at the end of the day, their games don't cost you your future. They cost them theirs. And when the dust settles, when the truth rises, when life catches up with them, they'll see it. Even if they'll never admit it, they'll feel it. That emptiness, that isolation, that constant dissatisfaction. That's the price of their games. And that's the powerful reminder I want you to take with you. You don't lose when you walk away from a narcissist. They do. They lose the relationship. They lose the trust. They lose the future they could have had if they had chosen authenticity over arrogance, honesty over deception, growth over games. Because in the end, the narcissist doesn't just lose people, they lose themselves. And that is the one loss they can never escape.